I thought it might be time to change the tire on my Raptor. So while I was at it, as I often do, I thought I'd make a video on how to just go about doing that as a help to the customers. I'm going to stop and start the video just in the interest of time, but the first thing I'm going to do is remove the rubber caps. I'm going to go ahead and loosen this nut and the one on the corresponding nut on the other side. I'm going to drop the wheel off the fork. Then I'm going to peel the tire off that way because, of course, it's wired in here where the control cable is, so I can't pull it this way. Well, I could if I cut it off, but I certainly don't need to do all that. I'll just take it off that way. When you take off the outside nut, I'm using the other side where the wire isn't, but it's the same configuration here. You have a retaining clip. See, it's completely solid here, which keeps, it's just a safety measure to keep the tire from ever wanting, not that it would, but ever wanting to come out of this fork. And the basket bracket actually holds the retaining clip in. So the next step, I'm going to loosen this basket bracket so I can take this washer retaining clip off. I've removed the washer retaining clip. You see, when this is properly in place on here, not only the basket bracket holds it in place, but more importantly, the large nut holds that in place that seats over top of this. I did the same thing on the other side, again, twisting this little retaining clip out of its hole and pulling it back. Now, if the video shows you, you can see this wheel is free to slide down off of the rim, off of the fork. The next step will be to loosen the brake assembly, as this nut is holding the hub onto the fork. When I take this off, she should just drop right out. Now this little spacer, this collar, is right behind here. It basically acts as a spacer. It will fall out, and now the wheel is loose, so it will drop off of the fork. As you can see, I've got the tire off of the fork. However, what's holding it up right now is this control cable. Good idea to very carefully bend these retaining clips, holding the control cable open a little bit so that you can loosen this control cable, just to make it easier to get the tire off the rim, give you a little more slack, a little more space. You want to be very careful and ginger, so you don't put a lot of pressure on this here. You want to be mindful. We have a nice protection spring here on the wires, but still be careful so you don't put a lot of torque or a lot of pressure on this. It's just not good. I've opened up these clips. They bend open. Again, be careful. You know, you don't want to go fast. Just bend them open so that you can get the wire, the control cable wire, out of there. And now I have a lot more slack to lay my rim and wheel down. The wheel is now completely off the fork. Now, if you wanted a little more slack, you could simply take this off and pull the brake cable out to eliminate this from keeping it that close to the scooter. And then you'll have all this room to lay the tire down and to do your work. Replacing this tire is much like replacing a tire on a bicycle at this point. And I must admit, it is just about as fun as well. I went ahead and removed the brake cable from the brake mechanism. It's always good practice, folks, when you're working, to put your parts back and the screws back. I'm doing this with one hand, so bear with me. Back the way you found them. That way you do not lose any parts, and also will remind you how they go back together. As so. Now I put this one backwards, this part, but you get the idea. It should have been the other way. So now I'm ready to go to work on my tire. Another little hint, what I've done
I've pulled this nut out, I'll show you, far enough so that the nut itself will act as a resting spot to protect these cables while I'm working on the other side. Once you get the first sidewall off, the rest should come off relatively easily. You would think this is common sense, but let me go ahead and say it anyway since we're here. Obviously, let all the air out of the tire and squeeze it as best as you can before you start this operation. What I use to peel that off, not exactly the right tool for the job, but I used a 14mm wrench. I got under it and I just peeled it off like this. And there we have it. Tire successfully off. The tube is still inside. You want to make sure you don't use a sharp object. I use this. It's not exactly the proper tool for the job, but it worked fine to peel the tire off the rim because you don't want to booger up your inner tube in the process. You also want to make sure that your inner tube valve stem, once you peel the second side off, in other words, finally removing it, is out of this hole. You don't want to be trying to pull the tire off with the tube in it with the stem still in the hole. So you want to push it on through so that it clears this.
While changing my tire, I thought I'd take a moment to show everybody what it looks like, the brake mechanism looks like. These are drum brakes. That surprises a lot of people, but these are very, very high quality bikes, as you all know. Those pads look really good. You'll pretty much never have to replace these. You know, the good news on other scooters is you never have to replace the tires too much, and that's because they break long before the tires wear out. But, you know, replacing the tire on this is not fun. The front tire, the back tires are very easy. It's not fun, but it's certainly something anyone who's ever replaced a bicycle tire could do. Just take your time, take a rest. If you get frustrated getting that tire on and off the rim, well, don't force it, you'll get it. At any rate, enjoy.